Hi there, my name's Rebecca Root, reporter and senior associate with Devex, and today I'm joined by Dr. Patrick Osewe, Chief of the Health Sector Group with the Asian Development Bank, where we're going to be talking about vaccine equity, COVID vaccine equity in Asia and the Pacific region, a new group that should help with that, and just broader efforts in general to tackle COVID-19 in the region. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So first of all, what can you tell us about COVID-19 vaccination efforts in Asia and the Pacific region?
First, let me frame what, when you talk about Asia, 55% of the world population live in Asia. It's a very diverse continent. We have big countries like India and China that have more than 1.3 billion people. We have island nations like Philippines, 7,000 islands, Indonesia, 18,000 islands. We have Pacific nations that are small islands. We have countries with very difficult terrain, like Bhutan. It's almost impossible to fly there unless it's a special plane. And Papua New Guinea, which is mountains, very difficult to go to different mountains and so on. So it's a very diverse continent if you look at Asia and the Pacific. Now, when we talk about vaccines, the biggest challenge, the biggest issue about vaccines is that the rich countries, about 85% of all the vaccines have been administered in rich countries. For example, in countries like Canada, 62% of the world the population has been fully vaccinated. In the UK, it's about 59% of the population. In Germany, about 55% of the population. In the US, about 50% of the population. Now, when we come to Asia, just to give a few examples, in countries like Philippines, just about 10% of the population has been vaccinated. But as you go further, in countries like Vietnam, just less than 1% of the population has been vaccinated. In Pakistan, about 2.4% of the population, and Papua New Guinea, 0.2% of the population. So we have a significant divide between the rich and upper middle income countries and the low income countries. Serious challenges that we are facing with vaccines. And the COVID pandemic will not go away if one region is highly vaccinated and other regions are not highly vaccinated, because more variants will come and will go to populations that are fully vaccinated.
So yeah, obviously you mentioned there a range of different countries that fall under that Asia and Pacific umbrella, and a range of different contexts, cultural contexts, also geographic locations to bear in mind. What for you are the biggest challenges that countries in this region are facing in rolling out the COVID-19 vaccine?
So there are challenges at the global level and at the national level. At the global level, the biggest challenge we're facing is that vaccines are not available. Most vaccines that are being manufactured in 2021 are all bought. And so many of our developing member countries just cannot get them. There are 7 vaccines that are authorized by either a stringent regulatory authority or by WHO. And the big ones there are Sinovac, Sinopharm, Pfizer, BioNTech, and also AstraZeneca. Those are the main vaccines being produced, but most of them have been purchased for 2021. So many countries are really struggling to get vaccines. Others like Moderna are also approved, but they are not large volumes to make a significant difference in many of our developing member countries. And so those are the global challenges. At the national level, there are also a lot of challenges. For example, when vaccines arrive at the national level, there needs to be a very clear plan on who is going to get it first, because vaccines will not arrive in huge numbers. They'll arrive in small numbers, and therefore there needs to be a very clear plan on who's going to get it first. So planning is a significant input that is required. The second is distribution. and how to distribute it from the national level to various levels, particularly the last mile, coming from the national level to the provinces, to the local authorities, and in some of the countries, these are island nations. So that whole logistical supply management is a big challenge. And once it arrives there, what kind of information system do you have to be able to ensure that people get the first dose, get the second dose, the human resources that are required to be able to vaccinate the people? Many countries are mobilizing retired health workers, doctors, nurses, and others to increase the capacity to be able to deal with this. And then lastly, because this is for the first time in the history of the world, millions of people have been vaccinated more or less at the same time. And we don't know how many of the new vaccines might have side effects, for example. So there has to be a system of monitoring if there are any adverse events, following immunization that needs to be tracked. So that is a major challenge, just monitoring what is going on in the population.
So talk us through how the Asian Development Bank is helping to address some of those challenges that you mentioned.
So the Asian Development Bank is providing significant resources to address all these challenges. We're providing significant technical assistance. We are hiring organizations that are experts in various aspects, in planning, in logistics supply management, in information systems, in cold chain requirements, to be able to ensure that the vaccines, when they arrive from the airport, can flow all the way up to the last mile, and it reaches the population. So a lot of expertise that is required. Some are internal in the country, some are external, and so we engage by hiring experts at various levels of the various levels of deployment.
And so what can you tell us about this new regional vaccine advisory group that the Asian Development Bank is helping to host?
So one of the biggest challenges that developing member countries are facing are regulatory challenges, because there are many vaccines that are being manufactured. And we have three types of vaccines. There are vaccines that have been authorized by stringent regulatory authorities. The second group of vaccines are those that have been authorized by WHO. And the third group of vaccines are vaccines that are widely used, but they have not been authorized by the stringent regulators or by WHO. For example, Covaxin manufactured by Bharat Biotech of India, it's been administered to 47 million people across many countries. Sputnik is a vaccine that's being used in more than 100 countries. CanSino from China is a vaccine that's being also used in many countries. So these are vaccines with real-world experiences that have not received WHO or stringent regulatory authorization. So we wanted to find out as a development bank to bring the regulators together to be able to advise on how vaccines are performing. Those that have been authorized by regulators or WHO, and those that have already not been authorized, to basically look at how they're performing and share information. Look at issues of because regulators have a lot of information. Every manufacturer, before a vaccine is authorized, they share the dossier with regulators. So they have a lot of information. A lot of it is confidential. There are some that can be shared with approval from the manufacturer. So in our region, we just wanted to have the experts from various regulatory authorities in Asia, from Europe, from North America, to be able to meet once every quarter, sometimes more if it's required, to brainstorm, to share information, share knowledge, and to be able to build the capacity of each other, because many regulatory authorities are at different stages of maturity. Some at very high level maturity, others are still at lower level maturities. If they work together, they can exchange information and also build the capacity, the build of capacity of the less mature ones.
What can you tell us about the composition of the group?
So the membership of the Regional Vaccine Advisory Group, 13 members, regulators from Asia, regulators from North America, and also regulators from Europe. The leadership, it is chaired by Australia Therapeutic Goods Administration, and co-chairs the regulator from India and also the regulator from Indonesia. We meet once every quarter, and sometimes, if the issues that are emerging, we'll be meeting more regularly.
Perfect. And so what does this advisory group hope to accomplish?
So the three things. One is promote information exchange. Second is capacity building. And also in our region, there's a lot of emphasis on regional collaboration because we have entities like ASEAN, there's a lot of regional blocks. And so this also helps with the sharing of information across the whole of Asia to be able to strengthen regulation, which is a big challenge.
And so how can others in the sector support the group, but also the wider efforts to tackle COVID-19 in the region?
So manufacturing is a big problem. Many of the big manufacturers are looking at how in our region we can expand manufacturing capacity. So we have manufacturing capacity in countries like India, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, in Singapore, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Korea, Indonesia, and so on. And I think that what is really needed is to support manufacturing, because the current manufacturing capacity is not going to make us a huge difference. Many of the manufacturers, the global manufacturers, are looking for partners in Asia, and I think a concerted effort to support and have more contract manufacturing organizations that are producing vaccines that have been authorized, or vaccines that are about to be authorized, to be able to meet the demand in the region, and of course to contribute to global demand as well. So I think that if in the sector we can have a very, very significant dialogue on how to increase manufacturing capacity, because now people are talking about booster doses in rich countries, when in developing countries, in Africa, for example, only 1.7% of the population has been vaccinated. In Asia, less than 5% of the population. So manufacturing is a critical issue that requires both financing, technical assistance, and a lot of technology transfer.
And so for those who are thinking, yep, I'm interested, I want to support the group, I want to learn more, where can they go to access more information?
So we are establishing a website at ADB that will have all the information, every meeting that we have, all the documentation that we have in preparation of the meeting and post-meeting will all be at this website, because we want this information to be readily available since regulatory challenges is one of the biggest bottlenecks in terms of making vaccines available.